Okay, students. So in the last lecture, we discussed about different types of research. Today, we will discuss it one by one. So if you'll go back, these were the types of research that I discussed. That there are basically only two types of research wherever you go, but under the various heads. If you talk about different types of objectives, then you have descriptive and analytical research. If you talk about application based, then there is applied and fundamental. If you talk about on the basis of information sort or on the basis of data that you have collected, it is quantitative and qualitative. And when you talk about the process, then there are again conceptual and empirical. So let's discuss these heads one by one and try to differentiate why there are only two types of research under different heads. So first of all, we will talk about descriptive and analytical research. Generally, whenever you are trying to inquire about the state of affairs, like why a particular problem is prevailing, why it is existing, then in social science, such types of research are often also called as ex post facto research. Means you're trying to find out what had caused that factor to exist. And when that happening has already been done, then you're trying to know why it came or why it existed. So ex post facto means something has already been happened and now you are trying to find out why such thing happened. Getting it? Suppose in a shopping mall, the normal frequency of customers is, let's say, on an average, there are 2,500 people footstepping in a shopping mall. But eventually, one day, you saw that 6,000 people walked in the shopping mall. Now you're trying to find out why there was this rapid increase in the customers that are coming to the mall. Why this frequency was so high? Maybe some kind of you can say celebrity came there to endorse a particular brand, or there was some kind of function and customers were called in order to attend that function, or maybe there was some expo mart held there. So this is when something has already been happened and now you're trying to find out what caused that thing to happen. On the other hand, when you're talking about the research analytical research is basically used to find facts on the basis of information that has already been available. So suppose you're trying to find out what will be the effect of a particular event on some other variable. Getting it? Means what will happen if I'll mix chemical A with chemical B? Now this you can know only when this will happen. Till date you have not mixed any chemical with chemical A with chemical B. Getting it? So in such types of research, something has not been happened, but you're predicting what will happen if such thing gets happen. What will happen if the lockdown gets increased from, let's say, 3rd of the next month to 30th of the next month? It will lead to more economic loss, but how much more? Will we someday be able to nullify the loss that has been caused due to the lockdown of coronavirus? So these are only probabilities. You have certain information, you have certain facts and figures, but the whole research is done on informative basis. You cannot be sure about it. So this is basically descriptive and analytical research. There are more slides. Now you talk about applied and fundamental research. So basically applied research, it always tries to find out solution for an immediate problem that is being faced by an entity or a group of people or a society. Marketing research could be one example. For example, let's talk about a very cute product. You might have heard many of the girls even use that, bathing caps. Now, bathing caps, generally there was a problem that was prevailing with the girls that they have long hairs and every time it becomes very tedious job for them, to wash their hair and then combing it, drying it with the help of the dryer. It used to kill a lot of time. So a research was done whether there can be a product that can help girls, mm, to prevent their hairs from getting wet while taking a shower. So bathing cap was one example of it. Then, whereas the fundamental research aims at journalization, which is already being proved. You need not to prove it again and again. That is why fundamental research is called as generally a pure research. Basically, if you'll talk about any particular example or any particular theory, axiom, or any rule, that comes under the heading of fundamental research. Like pure mathematics is one example. 2 plus 2 will always be 4. It can never be 5. So there are some concepts which you cannot change, which has been prevailing in the society from very long. Such types of things comes under fundamental research, whereas applied research tries to find out the solution for a problem that has never been prevailed. For example, right now we are finding the medicine for coronavirus. Now this is an immediate problem that is being faced by the whole world. So a lot of research is going on coronavirus right now. So all those research comes under the category of applied research, whereas fundamental research is that if we are able to develop a medicine within, say, next coming 4 to 6 months, mm, about coronavirus, then we can go for more fundamental research, like can it be more economic once we have developed the medicine? Can it be given to the patients without the recommendation of doctor? What can be the effects and side effects of taking a medicine for a longer period of time? So these are again fundamental research. Basically, when something is being done for the very first time, it comes under the heading of applied research. And when you are trying to extend the reachability of a research that has already been done, you're trying to devise new, you can say, new areas where you can apply that research, or you're trying to extend the scope of that research, that comes under the heading of fundamental research. That is why generally these researches are called as pure research or basic research. That has already been described by me. Then you talk about quantitative versus qualitative research. Whenever you are measuring the data in the terms of quantity, in terms of numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. For example, if I say, what is your satisfaction level regarding these online lectures that are being taken during the lockdown on a scale of 5? 1 being the least satisfied and 5 being highest satisfaction. So rate it. Generally, you will be giving me a number between 1 to 5. Getting it? This is a quantitative data that you'll be giving me. But if I say, are you satisfied with the type of classes that are being taken online during this lockdown, and you say that I'm little bit satisfied. Now this little bit does not have any value. It can be anything. Means for an individual, little bit satisfied can be 2. For another individual, little bit satisfied can be 3. For someone it could be 1 also. So I'm not having a quantity, but it doesn't mean that such type of data are irrelevant. Such types of data are also relevant. And generally, whenever you are trying to collect quantitative data, you use a Likert scale. Now, what is a Likert scale? Let me make you understand. Likert scale is basically a scale which is having certain units. Generally, the Likert scale, 90% of the time, not always, but 90% of the time, Likert scale has 5 measurements. It can be 7 also, it can be 10 also, but 90% of the time I'm saying it has 5 values. For example, you want to know the satisfaction level. And why do we need a data in quantity, my dear? Because many of the softwares that we are having, eViews, SPSS, MOS, Advanced Excel, Data Analytics, JAWS, all those softwares works on quantity, not on quality. You cannot jot down a value, I am highly satisfied or I am least satisfied. They don't understand these values. They only understand numbers between 0 to 9. Only 10 digits they understand. So that is why we try to convert each and everything into quantity. So for example, if you are trying to know satisfaction level, then I was talking that generally the Likert scale is having 5 units. Generally they go like this, like if you're starting from 1 to 5, then 1 will be marked as least satisfied, 2 will be marked as slightly satisfied, 3 will be marked as neutral, 4 will be marked as satisfied, and 5 will be marked as highly satisfied. So generally it is of odd numbers, and the middle quantity is always neutral. This is what a Likert scale is. And you cannot give any value between 1 to 2. You cannot say 1.5. You need to be very exact. Either it will be 1 or 2. It cannot be in between. This helps to quantify our data in a better manner, and we are easily able to project the outcome of the research in a better manner. So that is basically quantitative. For example, if I'm measuring height of an individual, it is a quantitative data. But if I'm measuring the gender of an individual, it will be either male, female, or transgender. Now that comes under qualitative data. But when we are trying to do research and we want to incorporate gender, then we will have to convert this gender into something else. Then I might say that 1 is equals to male, 2 is equals to female, and 3 is equals to transgender. But it doesn't mean that transgender is greater than male or female. It doesn't mean that. This is basically a nominal form of data. Okay. Then we will talk about the last head of research, that is on the basis of process. So it is generally conceptual research or empirical research. Now, what do you mean by conceptual research and empirical research? Generally, conceptual research leads to, or it evolves some abstract idea, or it is interpreting the existing idea, reinterpreting rather. Getting it? For example, if you talk about any particular philosophy, like say we'll talk about Maslow's need hierarchical theory, a common theory. Maslow's need hierarchical theory says that generally the needs of an individual is divided under 5 heads. The first is the basic need, then comes the social needs, then the safety needs, then self-esteem, and then the last one is self-actualization. Now, this is a general idea, but if someone again works on Maslow's need hierarchical theory and he says that basic need can again be classified under 2 heads, let's say, I don't know whether it can be classified or not. I'm just giving my own views, or I'm just sharing an example with you. Now, again, this basic needs can be again subdivided under 2 heads. One is, let's say, basic needs, and the other are very basic needs. Let's take an example. So this is, my dear, you are reinterpreting the Maslow's need hierarchical theory. Now, generally, these types of research comes under the head of conceptual research. But whenever you are trying to identify, like again, come to chemistry or come to physics, what is the effect a pinhole camera like? You know, any image that will be seen through the hole of the pinhole camera will be seen as inverted and upright. Now, you cannot say it directly. For sometimes whenever you are giving a philosophical theory or an abstract idea, people do accept your idea on the basis of generalization, but many times you will have to prove it. Now, whenever you are proving your thing and you're developing an experimental setup for it, it comes under the formula of, or it comes under the head of empirical research. Means when people don't ask for any kind of experimental setup and they just try to believe on what you're saying, then that kind of research is called as conceptual research. But when the word or the society asks for an experimental setup or a mathematical proof and you need to provide it, then you are doing basically an empirical research. So these were the general heads under which research are subdivided. There are, it's not that these are the only types of research, there are various more research. I'll just name them and I'll tell you in short because they are not in your course. But there are other research also, my dear. One research could be, my dear, laboratory research, or it is also called as simulation research. Anything that you're doing in lab, any particular experiment, mixing two chemicals or trying to find out the effect of one chemical on other metal, these types of research are called as field setting research, laboratory research, or simulation research. Then whenever you are doing some research on, like, remains of some prehistorical sources or documentation of Roman Empire, these type, I mean, whenever you are researching on historical um, entities, then you are doing a historical research. For example, you have gone to the site of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and you're trying to examine which type of script they used to use. Getting it? That is the historical research. Then, my dear, there could be decision-oriented research, which always works on the basis of the decision of the researcher. On the basis of that, how you are using, which sampling you're using, only the researcher will decide it. And generally, these types of research are controlled by the researcher. So these are again few other types of research. I need not to discuss that much detail about these research, but still, if you want to know, these are also different kinds of research. Now let's talk about the differentiation between any two heads, not any two heads, any two types of research under the same head. So descriptive research and analytical research, we will try to examine the difference between them. Now generally descriptive research talks about finding any fact. Then generally, in order to find that fact, we use survey method. Whereas in analytical research, data is collected and analyzed and explained. So here we are talking about primary data. Whereas in descriptive also we are talking about primary data, but we are collecting data with the help of survey method. Whereas in analytical research, when the data is being collected, then you're talking about basically questionnaire designing. Then descriptive research ascertains and describes the characteristics of the issue. They try to check out each and every characteristics, why a particular problem is prevailing, what are the basic heads that can be seen by the impact of that particular happening. Basically, analytical research talks more than about the character of the research. It talks about formulation of the research, why it prevailed, what was the problem that led to this type of research. Getting it? So it is talking, analytical is talking in detail, analyzing something, why it happened, where it happened, when did it happen, what could be the, other probable, you can say, effects of this problem. Getting it? Whereas descriptive research does not talk that much. Something has already been happened and you are exhibiting the effects. कुछ चीज ऑलरेडी हो गई है, अब आप सिर्फ उसके इफेक्ट्स देख रहे हो, तो जो हो रहा है वो तो आपको दिख ही रहा है ना, तो उसमें सिर्फ आप उसके कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स पढ़ सकते हो, क्योंकि जो हो रहा है वो तो आपको दिख रहा है, तो उसको फाइंड करने की क्या जरूरत है जो ऑलरेडी दिख रहा है। लेकिन एनालिटिकल रिसर्च में वो चीज अभी घटित नहीं हुई है, वो चीज हो सकती है या आने वाले समय में ऐसा हो सकता है, तो उस समय में आप सिर्फ प्रिडिक्शन कर रहे हो एनालिटिकल रिसर्च में, जो हो सकता है। डिस्क्रिप्टिव रिसर्च में तो हो ही रहा है, आपकी आंखों के सामने है, तो होने के बाद आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते। सो दैट इज व्हाई इन डिस्क्रिप्टिव रिसर्च यू कैन नॉट कंट्रोल द वेरिएबल्स, वेयरएज इन एनालिटिकल रिसर्च यू कैन कंट्रोल द वेरिएबल्स। फॉर एग्जांपल, excuse me, for example, if you're saying what will happen if we attain education level of 100% among the citizens of India, will we become a developed country or will we still remain a developing country? Now this is an analytical research because we are still not, we have still not attained the, you can say, 100% literacy rate. So that will be an analytical research. But if you say what will be the impact of coronavirus on Indian economy, you're seeing it, my dear, stock market is crashing day by day. Getting it? So that is a descriptive research. Now if you'll go for basic research and applied research, generally basic research is done in order to expand your knowledge. You have some curiosity, what else, why it happened, what led to this, and how can we end it. So these are basic research that increase the understanding of fundamental principles. And generally, you already know about that subject, so it doesn't generate some revenue for you. So it does not have any commercial objectives. Whereas applied research, my dear, it is specifically commercial. Which type of products we can launch in order to solve a particular problem of a society, which procedures we can follow, whether this product will run in market or not. No. So applied research talks about solving practical problems that are prevailing in an economy. Whereas basic research is just curiosity driven. What will happen if I will do this? Getting it? So what is the IQ level, whether the IQ level of girls is more in class or boys? Now, nobody cares about it. Who cares about the IQ level? It is just the curiosity driven research of, let's say, any student in the class or of the teacher in the class. Then this is qualitative and quantitative. Anything that is having, my dear, a dynamic and negotiated reality comes under qualitative research. Whereas when you are assuming a fixed and measurable reality, you talks about quantitative research. Now, generally, qualitative data are collected through observations and interview, because you are measuring a quality. For example, if you say, "Are you honest?" He says, "Yes." How much honest? You cannot measure it. Getting, "Are you courageous?" He said, "Yes." How much? You can't say anything. So generally, these types of research are, these types of qualitative data are collected through observations and interviews, whereas quantitative data are collected through measuring it, actually, your height, your weight. So these can be measured. Okay. Then you talk about conceptual research, my dear. Conceptual research generally talks about developing new concepts and reinterpreting the existing concept, whereas experimental research is done on the basis of observations and experiments. Then second difference is that the researcher break down the theorem. Like I told you, Maslow's need hierarchical theory, broken into 5 different stages. Now again, the basic need again being divided into 2 different needs. So this is basically breaking down a particular theorem. Getting it? Or you can say extending the scope of the theorem, making it much more peculiar. Getting it? Then the researcher provides himself under the experimental research. The researcher develops a hypothesis for himself or herself, and then to try to either prove that hypothesis or disapprove the hypothesis, working on the basic experimental designs. So generally now the topic is 7 research process. What are the different processes under which we proceed for a research process? So generally, first of all, you define a research problem. So there are 7 steps, that is defining the research problem. So first of all, you need to identify the problem prevailing in the economy, because the basic phenomena of the research is it should have some social advantage. So first try to identify any particular problem prevailing in Indian economy or any economy. Then define that problem in a statement form, that what you are trying to do, in a simple and sober manner, not using more than 1-2 sentences. Don't make it a complicated one that the reader is unable to understand what you're trying to do. Generally the reader will lose interest. Then try to define that problem in a mathematical way, because that makes your problem much more appropriate and much more understandable by anyone. So first of all, identify the problem, define it in 1 or 2 lines, and then define it in the form of mathematics. Getting it? For example, if you're saying whether the IQ level of girls in India, means the simple problem is that I want to identify who is much more much more intelligent, whether it is girls in India or it is boys. Now, so the definition of your problem in 1 or 2 statements would be that I want to test the IQ level of boys and girls in India. This is defining it in statement, and then you are formulating it mathematically, that let the IQ level of boys be mu b and the IQ level of girls be mu g. Now, the mathematical definition would be mu b is equals to mu g, or anyone it can also be not equals to, and if it is mu g not equals to mu b, then whether mu g is greater than mu b or mu b is greater than mu g. It means you can say that whether the IQ level of girls is equals to the IQ level of boys or not, and if it is not, then whose IQ level is greater. Then step 2 is reviewing the literature. You will have to study at least 10 to 15 papers on how the previous researchers have calculated the IQ of an individual, and then how they have compared the IQ of 2 individuals or 2 groups. That is basically reading various research processes, various research papers, surveys, case studies, and even thesis that has been done on comparison of comparative analysis of IQ levels. Then the third would be, my dear, formulate the hypothesis. Now you need to formulate a statement that can be tested. So here generally you will form null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Now let me tell you, my dear, whenever you are formulating a null hypothesis, you should keep certain things in mind. Let me share it with you. So generally, whenever you're talking about null hypothesis, you need to clear something in mind. So you're talking about null hypothesis. So null hypothesis is denoted by H naught, and this naught is in suffix, so H naught. And generally, when you're talking about alternative hypothesis, so you denoted by HA, and A is again in suffix, so I need not to talk about it again and again. So generally, when you're talking about null and alternative hypothesis, they are denoted by H naught and HA. Now, while talking about null hypothesis, you should know that they both are inversely related to each other. Okay, so whenever you're talking about inverse proportionality, then whatever the null hypothesis would be, alternative hypothesis would be exactly opposite of the null hypothesis. So you can say H naught is equals to minus HA. This is one relationship between null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. And while explaining H naught, you should keep three things in mind. First is everything is normal. One thing. The second point is everything is equal. And the third thing, that is everything is independent. These are the three golden principles of, you can say, formulating a null hypothesis. So in the previous problem, we were talking about, let's say, the IQ level of girls and boys. Let me again rephrase it. Okay. So there we were talking about IQ level So now try to formulate the null hypothesis on the basis of these three, you can say these three principles. So we are trying to do IQ level. Try to rectify whether this is a normal phenomena that IQ levels of girls और IQ levels of boys, क्या हमें कुछ पता है कि ये बराबर होता है नहीं होता है, या कि इनमें से किसी एक चीज का ज्यादा IQ होता है गर्ल्स बॉयज का? नो, नॉर्मली जनरली ऐसा कोई कंसेप्ट या ऐसी कोई थ्योरी हमारे पास नहीं है. But these are two different entities. Let's say I say that IQ level of girls is, let's say, IQ G, and the IQ level of boys is IQ B. तो क्या ये दोनों इंडिपेंडेंट हैं? You know that independence generally does not hold good here. Why? Because IQ is somehow related with the age, the mental age and the chronological age. The chronological age depends upon time. So this cannot be, my dear, independency. So generally, whenever we are comparing two things, we assume that to be equal. In null hypothesis, we assume any two or more than two entities. Even if we are comparing 100 entities, my dear, we take them as equal. All 100 entities will be equal. So here we are comparing the IQ level of two individuals. So the null hypothesis would be that IQ level of girls is equals to IQ level of boys. And then we will go to the alternative hypothesis. So the alternative hypothesis would be just opposite of the null hypothesis. So here we have taken that IQG is equals to IQ B. So this is a null hypothesis. So alternative hypothesis will be IQ G is not equals to, no, I don't know how to do not equals to IQ B. These are the two hypotheses that you need to develop. So this is how you go for formulation of hypothesis. Okay, so then the fourth step is preparing the research design. Now again, although in your second unit you will study how to select a research design, but I'll tell you what is preparing a research design, like how you will be collecting the data, whether you will be collecting the data randomly, that we don't care about the number, how many females we are interacting, how many males we are interacting, or you will try to take 50% males, 50% females, because when 50 will give you response on the one side and 50 will give you the response on the other side, so you can easily compare them. Or there is no precise method, or again in this 50 girls you will again take girls from again you will divide this one entire set into three different parts, like out of the 50 girls you have taken few girls those are not even attained basic education, some those who have attained basic education, and some those who have even done higher education. Similarly on the phase of boys also you have done the same thing. So this is how these types of designs means, are you segmenting your sample population in a better manner? The more better manner you will stratify your sample, the better would be your outcome. Okay, then how you're going for data collection, that is the fifth step. Are you using primary data? Are you going to the field? Generally primary data is much more precise data. It gives you the exact information about the time or what all is prevailing in the economy. If you want to know it, then you will have to gather the primary data, or you're using some secondary data, some research has already been done of this kind and you're still referring that data. It totally depends upon the viewpoint of the researcher. Then sixth is, after collecting the data, how you're analyzing that data, whether you're using some kind of software. And generally we go for software because they are flawless. While doing analyzing a data or by pen and a paper, you might create some mistake. I'm not saying that you have intendedly created a mistake, but you might create, human errors are always possible. See, so you might create a mistake. So generally we rely on softwares, and it is not that you need to use SPSS only. You can use any software, my dear, that has been approved. You can use JAWS, you can use SPSS, you can even use Excel also. Excel will go for it, my dear. You only need to apply a t-test. You can do it on Excel. Then in the seventh and the last step, my dear, you need to interpret. Interpretation means on the basis of analysis of data, whether you are going to reject a null hypothesis or you'll fail to reject a null hypothesis. That means whether you will reject a null hypothesis or accept, but we don't use the word accepting a null hypothesis. That I'll teach you when we'll be studying fourth and the fifth unit. So that was all about defining the 7 different steps involved in your research process, and that's it from the first unit. Thank you very much.